All right, this is video 2 from my Fire Engine Red training videos. And in this video, I am going to show you how to make a form in Fire Engine Red. In the last video, I spent about 15 minutes showing you all the different ways to access the data in these forms. But now, obviously, the next logical step is to show you how to create one of those forms to get that data. So starting at the very beginning, when you get to your Fire Engine Red page, you'll click Forms. And then once you're there, you're going to click Add New Form here in the draft area. Or perhaps the easiest way to go from this, rather than add new form, I would simply copy one. Um, I I just think that's so much easier than starting from scratch. If you just copy one of the forms that already exists, it copies over all the DCC branding. It copies over all the question fields, which you can just delete or change. So you could click Add New Form, and you get a blank slate to start from. But in reality, it's just always easier to go to one of these active forms and copy it. So to do that, um, let's just do it now with a Buccaneer Days registration. This is a single page form, so there's not too much to delete or edit. I'm going to click this, and I'm going to just click copy. When I click copy, it'll automatically copy it as a draft. So I'm going to name this new one test or tutorial form. And eventually I will delete this as well, but let's just start with tutorial form as the name. Now it took me right to tutorial form, but as you can see, when I go back to our main page, tutorial form, new ID number, tells me when it was created, and actually looks like this is in a time zone forward. That's kind of interesting. But then I can edit it or activate it right here. We're not ready to activate it. We're going to use edit. But you can see it's in a draft form. It is not being copied as active. So tutorial form, and it is currently Buccaneer Days. Everything on the Buccaneer Days form is here because we copied it. So we might have to delete a lot of this stuff. For the tutorial form, I'm going to do this as a, a pretty, we'll just come up with questions as we go, but let's just start here. You are able to always copy questions, move questions, create new questions, or do what's called a bulk edit of questions. I have not used the bulk edit a whole lot. I use the copy move questions quite a bit and the add new questions quite a bit. Additionally, as your forms get longer, these pages will become more important, that you are developing different pages for your forms, because research does show that as a form gets longer, the likelihood of a student finishing it goes down. So if you want people to finish your form, you don't really want much more than 10 questions on a page before you add a new page. It's better to have two 10-page two pages of 10 rather than one page of 20. So keep that in mind as well. And it's really easy to navigate between the pages here or delete pages here as well. Then finally, it gets down to the pages that we're on right here. And you can see these are our fields. They're drag and droppable. They're easily editable. And then there's also a way to add new questions right here or delete them. So let's just kind of go through the different types of question fields, because that's probably the most important thing. When I create a new question, I'm going to have the option to make it single line text, multiple line text like a paragraph, multiple choice with a single selection, multiple choice with a free response, like choose as many as you want, basic HTML, which, if you're unfamiliar with coding language, the HTML is essentially text. This is text. It's not code. It shows up on the screen as text. A hidden field, which I don't we use these, but I've never actually been the one to make them. The Fire Engine Red reps are always the ones that use these. A file upload, which can be really handy, a date, an email, and a SEEB. All right. Let's start with just the text that's single line. This allows me to create a question that the respondents have a single line to enter. So let's say this. My label is name. That's going to be the text that they see, and then it will give them the single line afterwards to follow. I could say name colon, or I could say what is your name? And then it's going to say, do you want to display this label to the left of it? So, we're going to have this box that they enter. Do you want the box to come after the question label, or do you want it below? So I like it when the label field is above the input area. So this second one. Each question can have a hint. The hint is this exact question mark. You'll get one of those. See, it's giving us a hint right now. Allow a tooltip to the question like me. HTML allowed. So I could say, this is where you write your name. And then this question mark will follow the question, and they can hover over it for the tip. For this is not probably necessary. And I can choose where I want that hint to be. I don't use hints a whole lot, but I do use required a lot. This is where you can determine, do they have to say this or not? And a lot of these you say yes to. You're going to require a lot of these. And then you can do a custom error if they don't do it. So please submit your full name in the space provided. So this error, if I don't provide the name, if this say, what is your name? There's a blank field. The respondent doesn't put in anything. This error is going to pop up. After required is visibility. This is super important. This is the trigger. So say, we'll get to it in a bit. Let me not go over visibility quite yet, because there's going to be some really great examples of where visibility is needed soon. Then the next thing is naming your question for backend usage. So I'm just going to call this name, and then I'm going to give it a token called name. What is this? Well, when you are naming your question on the back end, it allows you to retrieve that data more easily for future usage or to embed it into emails. The token is most likely going to be what you use rather than the name. And what a token does is it allows you to use a parentheses structure of the token to submit whatever was added into the field. Okay, so that'll make more sense in a moment. Right now, I'm just going to call it name. I can also control how long of a field they give us here. I'm going to leave it blank. And then I can also mask this, which you don't need to worry about masking. Link to a custom field. You don't really need to do that. Or assign field value in CSS. You don't need to do any of that. I skip all of these unless something really specialized comes around. Okay, so I'm going to save and close, and you will see now I have what is your name. Okay, now you're probably noticing it's weird that this says Buccaneer Days still. Let me go on to the next question type, which would be HTML. This up here is pure HTML. It doesn't have a question. It doesn't have a response. It's just HTML data. So when you go to new, if you click HTML, you will get something like this Buccaneer Days. So let me show it to you. Right now, it's Buccaneers Days is the title, and it's coded as a heading. You can look those up on Google, or you can just skip them. And we're going to call this tutorial form. Okay. Visible, it's always going to be visible. And you can see, since this is just HTML and there's no question, this is really short. It's either visible or not visible. We're not even going to name it. We're going to save and close. And now my form will say tutorial form at the front. You can also use HTML just for spacing. You can see right here, this is purely just a space. This is blank HTML, and it just creates a gap in the form, which is sometimes nice. Okay, so we've covered responses that are free entry. We've covered HTML. The next thing would be multiple choice. That's what this which Buccaneer Day are you registering for is. So if I were to go here and click new, I'm going to do multiple choice, choose one here, and I'm going to say, are you an expert at Fire Engine Red form building? And it's going to be, we don't need a hint here. Required? Yeah, you're going to have to do it. I'm going to leave this error blank because it's going to default to, please complete this. It's got a default error. And I'm going to have it always be visible. I'm going to name it FER and give it the token FER. And now this is where it gets interesting. Input type. Okay, we're doing multiple choice here. You can choose, do you want a drop-down menu where there's, say a person's choosing their age and there could be 70 different things. They click a drop-down menu just like this and they choose, age 0 to age 150 could be there. Or do you want it to be radio buttons? These are radio buttons right here where you just select one. The typical rule is that if there's more than 4, use a drop-down menu. If there's 4 or less, use radio buttons. So I'm going to use radio buttons. Now, this is awesome. The next part of the building is if you have an option list or not. If you select no, which it defaults to, you get to manually enter your options. Option 1, option 2, option 3. There you go, right? Enter them as you want, customize them. But we already have a lot of option lists created, such as academic interests, GPAs, countries, entry terms, and the one you'll use more than any is no yes. So my question was, are you an expert at Fire Engine Red form building? That's a yes or no question. I'm going to use the no yes option list. If you can use an option list, you should use an option list. Why? Because we can change those option lists and they will change across every form. So let's say that you're asking someone their academic interest and we have this question on 10 different forms. When we change our academic interest at DCC, rather than having to change every single form, we just change the option list. Okay? So it is always best to use the option list if you can. Sport interests, let's say we get rid of a sport, but we're asking this question on 20 different forms. You don't want to have to manually update all 20 forms. So use the sport interest option list. Okay, I'm going to use a no yes. I can also have a free choice label where it would say other and then they could enter something. And you can also choose to randomize it if you want. I'm not going to. So I'm going to do a no yes. And I'm going to save and close. Now it's going to have, are you an expert at FER form building? No, yes. Okay. This is exactly what I did here. Which Buccaneer Day are you registering for? Monday or Thursday? Okay. March 20th or April 20th? Which one do you want? Here or here? Now this would have been custom versus this is an option list. All right, I'm going to delete this just as we're updating our form. You can see this next bit. I've done HTML, single line entry, but this next one is different yet. We have email address as its own form or as its own question type. So email address, you can see here. Here's how I built that. I clicked new and I clicked email. Why is it its own question type? How come it's not just a free entry on a single line. Well, the reason for that is because if you click email, it will validate it, and you can actually force the user to confirm it. Okay, confirm, like that. It will only accept emails. Okay, so that's why you would use the email button here. Question type email. All right, let me show you this visibility thing while we're at it. I don't know why we would use it for email, but we're just going to play around. Rather than it always showing on the form, visibility allows you to hide the question until a different button is clicked. So I'm going to say visible when the following conditions are met. Earlier I made a yes, no, and let's just say I want your email if you are not an expert at fire engine red form building. So are you an expert at fire engine red form building? No. This question will now pop up. And I'm going to call this email. It's probably already in use, so we'll just call it email 1. Let's see if that's, it's already being used. Whoops. We'll just call this email. Okay, save and close. So now this email that I just built, this one right here, will only pop up based off of the logic provided up here. So this is kind of the crash course in everything. You can see I haven't covered all of these, but they're pretty self-explanatory. If you want a paragraph, you do text more than one line. If you want a multiple choice list that they can choose from all the different options, it's multiple choice, choose multiple. File upload is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to say, please upload your immunizations, and then they're going to click upload, and then they drag and drop it. Probably the last one I want to go over in this video is the date. Date is very important. You could ask someone for their birth date. You could ask them for when they plan to start classes at DCC. You could ask a date for a variety of reasons. But whenever you do so, it's good to use the date function. And it's going to ask all the same questions. Is it required or not? Is it visible or not? What's the name? But you can actually customize the format you want the date in. And you can have what's called a dynamic start year. So say you could have it default to the current year. So when they see this option, what date were you born? This wouldn't make any sense. It'll say 2023. We don't want that. We want a dynamic start year in most cases, where it's going to give them an option list of this, when were you born? And rather than them having to scroll all the way down to their birth date, we are going to have it based off of this logic. So this will go back 75 total years, and next year it'll still only go back 75 years, and the year after that it'll still only go back 75 years. So then it's always staying relevant. So that's what we're going to do there. The end year would be obviously the top value of the date, and we can set that to 0. So now you can see our option list is running from 1948 to 2023. Maybe that's too long. Maybe you don't want that. You can change it to 50, and then this date option list will run from 73 to 2023. Maybe you want them to go forward a little bit. I could go -5 here. Now it goes to 2028. So that's how this date field works, and it's sometimes really handy to know how to do those dynamic starts. Okay, so I didn't cover everything. There's a lot more to it than what I've covered thus far. But at the end of the day, you're just going to have to play around with some of these. Look at other forms. Look at what is required, what isn't required. Mess around with the logic pieces. And as we go over the application side of things, it's almost the exact same within the application. And we'll cover more details because there's also things like multi-page logic email response, all of that stuff as well to talk about. Additionally, I didn't even talk about the properties, pages, presentation, logic, and page properties yet. We'll get to that in applications as well, but I think this is a really good stopping point for this video. That's how you build a form in Fire Engine Red. Your best friend is not Google, it's not me, it's playing. It's coming in here and messing around and seeing how things work. And when you want to see how it goes, check out that preview button once you finish something and you can see how it looks. Are you an expert? No. Now I'm grabbing this piece of information. This is how it'll look once you're done. So always use that preview button to see how things go. Play around with it, and hopefully this video helps you.